something went wrong this morning. I'm supposed to receive my PowerPoint in my tablet, but apparently it didn't reach my tablet. So I will just be dependent on my power. Well, that's technology. Never perfect. Anyway, the passage this morning is from the book of Judges, and one person, and that person is Gideon. I'm tempted to just jump immediately to Gideon because there's so much about Gideon. I would love to preach. There's so many things that we can learn from his life, but some of you might have a disconnect. Where is Gideon in the whole plan of God? I mean, where is Gideon in the Old Testament? And all of a sudden, it just appeared now. Gideon is one of the judges. Remember? I can only go back as far as Egypt, okay? Remember the Israelites were all slaves in Egypt, and then God called Moses, and then Moses delivered Israel into the promised land. And then in the promised land there were a lot of dangers, a lot of giants, and then God called Joshua. And then Joshua became their leader, and then eventually they were able to occupy the promised land, and they have been prosperous. They have been growing. And then eventually Joshua died, and then what comes next? And then there came the judges. The judges. Now, the DC is the time of the judges. And one of the famous judges is Samson. You know, he was one of the famous judges. But there are about 12 judges. And Eli was the last judge. No, Gideon was one of the judges. Now, the Israelites had been delivered in Egypt and have settled into the promised land. And during that time, they were ruled by men and women called judges. So that's why when you open your Bible and you study Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then you see the judges. And then there came 1st and 2nd Samuel. So judges, these are the men and women called by God to lead Israel. The book of Judges in the Old Testament tell us that the people of Israel kind of bounced back and forth from being faithful and obedient to God, and being disobedient. So what happened is, the entire Israel, they will obey God. And what happened? God will bless them. But then what happens after next? They will disobey God. And God will bring calamity. In what form? Normally in the form of a conquering army. So when Israel is worshiping God and obedient to God, God brings in blessings, flourish. The wheat, the economy, everything is flourishing. But then when they disobey God, God uses conquering army to enslave them. Yeah. So that is the story for 12 cycles. Now, one of the conquering army, after 40 years of peace and prosperity, the people began once again to wander from God's will. And as often happened, their moral decline was followed by military oppression from the outside. This time was the Midianites who were conquering Israel. When you start reading the Judges, as if you are watching History Channel. Every detail is there. It's just like very, very encouraging to see. It's like watching a movie. The Midianites is one of the conquering army that God used to enslave Israel. The Midianites roamed the desert in what is the modern day called Saudi Arabia. And the Midianites would wait. See how clever they are? They will not conquer Israel. They would wait until the people of Israel had finished planting their crops. And then they would sweep down upon and stealing their crops and herds and destroying what they could not take with them. What a horrible people, huh? They could just conquer them, but no, they wait. Okay, let's wait until all of the crops are ready for harvest. And when they have harvested them, then we will conquer them. That's the Midianites. And then what happened? Israel cried to God, "Oh, God, help us. This is too much for us. The Midianites are making our lives horrible, miserable." Israel cried to God. And then came Gideon. Okay, so that's where Gideon comes in. You probably know Gideon. Anyone here been to any hotels? When you open one of the drawers, you will find a Bible by Gideon. Okay, so in all hotels there is that's one of their ministry, the Gideon ministry. But they came that into this person called Gideon. Gideon was a farmer. And an angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon and informed him, Gideon, you were to deliver Israel from the Midianites. Oh, Midianites. He was just a farmer, and unlike some farmers, he had no desire to be anything more than a farmer. Never had any political ambition, never dreamed of being a military leader or a general, and yet God had a different plan for his life. Now, is it in the next slide? Okay. This is a very, very interesting story. When God called Gideon, Gideon was having second thoughts. Maybe God made a mistake. Maybe God doesn't want me to lead an army. Because I'm just a farmer. I'm not a general. I'm just a farmer. So he asked God for a sign. And he said, hey, you know what? God, let me ask you for a sign. Oh, I was supposed to bring a blanket. Anyway, a fleece. He said, God, if you really want me to lead Israel, here is a fleece or a blanket. I will put it outside my house. Okay. If that fleece or blanket is soaking wet, and all of the ground around it is bone dry, then I know you want me to lead Israel. Come on, that's a tough sign, huh? So morning came and he woke up and he saw the ground bone dry. Well, it's Middle East, so it's bone dry. And then when he picked up the fleece, it was soaking wet. It was soaking wet. And Gideon said, my God, you really wanted me to lead Israel. Do you know what? Maybe that's just a mistake, you know? Let me reverse it the other way. Let me reverse the other way. I will put another blanket, but this time, if the blanket is dry and all the grounds around him is wet, and I know, God, you really wanted me to go and lead the army of Israel. Then what? Morning, then what happened? The grounds were wet from the dew. And when he approached the blanket, pick it up, it was dry. And so Gideon said, God, you really wanted me to lead Israel. After a little convincing, Gideon issued a call across, and they, across Israel to arms, and they responded and they came in. It was one thing for a farmer to say he was going to lead an army into battle. It was another thing for a farmer to have to lead an army into battle, especially when you have 32,000 men. And the Midianites have 135,000 men. So, for those of you who are fond of mathematics, if you have 32,000 army against 135,000 army, you are looking at annihilation. You just simply cannot defeat 135,000. What makes the story very interesting is this. The verse that Brother Joel read. God said, 32,000 is too many. I don't want Israel to boast that because of our army we defeated Midianites. So what happened? Gideon said, to the army of Israel, to any one of you who is afraid to go to battle, you may now go back to your home. What happened? 32,000, 22,000 left the camp, and only 10,000 left. And Gideon now is becoming so worried. I could not defeat 135 with 32. Now, God, you only leave me with 10,000 men. How on earth can I defeat an army with 10,000 men? And God said, Gideon, you still have too many. God, I only have 10,000 men. How can I defeat 135,000? God said, you still have too many. Go them, let them drink in the river. And so they drink. And God said, to those who drink with their face down, and to those who drink with their hands up, separate them. Anyone who drinks with their face down, you can now go home. And anyone who drinks up can stay. And you know what happened? The Bible says there were only 300 left. 300 left. And Gideon was really, really nervous. The story goes that they eventually, fast forward, they eventually defeated the Midianites. The plan was God, okay, you have to remember this. God placed fear, okay? God placed fear in the Midianites' camp. For one reason or another, God placed fear in the Midianites' camp. And they were fearful already. Long before they fight the Israel, they were already fearful. And so Gideon said, okay, let's put 100 men in the north, 100 men here, and 100 men here. And all I wanted you to do is just shout. You know? Shout and then bang the jars and everything, just make noise. And that's what they did. They shouted and they clanged. And then the Midianites heard this. And they were so afraid. To make the story short, they ended up killing one another, and some of those who survived left the camp. So it was over. The war was over. So what are the lessons of Gideon? What are the lessons that we can learn? Number one, God uses ordinary to do the extraordinary. God uses the ordinary to do the extraordinary. Gideon was just a farmer. He's not a military or a general from West Point. He was just a farmer. But God uses him to bring a military victory to Israel. So God uses the ordinary to do the extraordinary. It has nothing to do with how you look or what you can do or how smart you are. It has everything to do with God who created you. As a very unique individual, He is the master of the universe. I repeat, it has nothing to do with us. We have our own flaws. Remember Moses? When God called Moses to deliver the Israelites into the promised land, what was Moses saying? God, I could barely speak. How would I go to the Pharaoh? It's not how eloquent you are. It's not how good you speak. It's how God uses us. Abraham. Remember Abraham? God's... Abraham said, God, you want me to be the father of a nation with millions of people, like the stars in the heavens and the suns in the sea? How could I be a father? I don't even have one son. And I'm already 99 years old. Again, it's not about you. It's all about God uses the ordinary to do the extraordinary. It isn't our ability nearly as much as our availability. I repeat. It's not about our ability, but it's our availability that's important to God. We could have all of the ability, but the difference is how we use it. You could be the smartest person in this church. You could be the most gifted person in this church. You could be the most encouraging person in this world. But if you do not become available for the kingdom of God, nothing will happen. So it's not about our ability. I repeat, it's not about our ability. It's about our availability to be used by God. So church, God uses the ordinary to accomplish the extraordinary. So all of us here can be used by God. Anyone can be used by God. Anyone. If I believe in testimony, God used a provinciano like me. I grew up in the province. In the province, all we have is rice and corns. I grew up in that environment. I didn't came from the city. I was from the province. And one more, I have this speech problem. I stutter. You probably know the story. When I was already 5 or 6 years old, I cannot speak. I cannot speak at all. And they were already afraid that I might have a speech defect because I was already 5 or 6 years old. And all I could say is, mana mana. Mana mana. I was like little Hannah here, about 5 years old, and I could speak anything. I just said, mana mana, mana. Everything. If I want food, mana mana. If I want to go to the bathroom, mana mana. Everything is mana mana. And one good thing about the family, they knew what I'm talking about. Mana mana. We Filipinos are very good with that. We just 2 syllables. We could communicate. When you open up in the elevator, and then you ask, ba. And then the people inside the elevator will say, ba. Okay. So, and then people are, what? What happened? What happened? We just 2 syllable word, ba. And then the people inside the elevator say, ba. They already communicate. We're good with that. Just say with mana. Anyway, it's our ability. It's not our availability. Okay, number 2. God uses the ordinary to perform the extraordinary. Number 2 about the Gideons is God does not owe us an explanation. And some of us here have a lot of questions in life, but we have to accept that God does not owe us an explanation. Masisira ulo natin. We will be crazy about asking a lot of questions. Is it because of me? Is it because of the church? Is it because of him? Is it because... God does not owe us an explanation. In Judges 6:13, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, and this is what they were having a conversation with God, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And why have all the miracles of our ancestors told us? Didn't they say the Lord brought us out of Egypt, but now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to Midianites? This was at the peak of their oppression. And Gideon was, God, you said that you will bless our land when you brought us out of Egypt. But now I could see Israel being oppressed by the Midianites. We plant, we labor, and then all of a sudden they will come in and sweep our crop and our herds and leave us with nothing. And how could Israel survive with that? We will die in hunger. These were the questions of Gideon's to God. God, why would you allow such thing when you have promised to our ancestors that you will be with us? And now I could see with my eyes, people are dying. And the oppressors are letting go. Those are the questions. Those are tough questions. Why? Listen to God's response to Gideon. He said in Judges 6:14, then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites I am sending you. I want you, church, to just focus on this. With all of the questions that Gideon asked God, God did not answer him. Was God deaf? No. Was God ignoring the question? No. No. God was telling Gideon, go with the strength you have. Rescue the Israel. I am sending. God hears our questions. God hears our whys and hows. But God doesn't owe us an explanation, but instead He commanded us, go, I am sending you. That's not an answer. That's not another request. But then again, Gideon probably already knew the answer. And Gideon realized God didn't move. It was the Israelites who moved away from God. It took hard times for them to come back to God, and sometimes it takes hard times for us, church, to come back to God. God is always faithful. God will always in the business of blessing us. But we have to be in a position where God could bless us. If we moved away from the blessing of position, how could God bless us? When God say, you go to the right and we go to the left. God say, go straight and we go back. Because when God says something to us, He is telling us that is my will, and my will comes with blessing. And if we do not obey His will, where is the blessings of God? Because you disobey God in the first place. God doesn't owe us an explanation. He just wants us to obey. And that's where faith comes in. Trust God. Trust God. In a relationship, trust God. In your finance, trust God. In our community, trust God. In our family, trust God, because God knows the past, the present, and the future. God doesn't really care about our past. We cannot recreate the past. You know what? We just simply cannot. But God is more interested now and the coming days. God doesn't owe us an explanation. Last one, God gets the credit. I repeat, God gets the credit. Remember who's supposed to get the credit? 300 men and sending away 135,000 warriors packing. The credit belongs to God. The credit belongs to God. I repeat, the credit belongs to God. It's interesting. After the victory in Judges 8:22, the Israelites said to Gideon, wow, Gideon, you brought us victory. You're the man. Huh? Getting tired. What was that? Every time, everything a successful event, everything, you're the man, Gideon. Imagine 135,000 men. We just defeated them. You're the man. What are they shouting? Because of that, Gideon, you will be our king. You and your sons. Oh, wow. Dynasty, huh? You will be our king, and your son will be our king, and your grandson will be our king. Dynasty. The people are clamoring, you will be our king. For you have rescued us from the Midianites. Wow. Dynasty again, huh? Dynasty. They want him to be the ruler for many, many generations because of the victory. Gideon said, oh, wow. From a farmer to a king, huh? Wow. Not bad. I don't have to farm. I could just be a king. That's not a bad career move. But listen to Gideon's response. The next verse, Judges 8:23. But Gideon replied, I will not rule over you, nor will my son, grandson. The Lord will rule over you. He gives the credit. Let us always be careful to give God the credit. Doesn't mean that you had nothing to do with it, but understand where your talents and abilities came from. Always give God credit. I was reminded of this story about this church, a mega church. And there was a fire in the community. And when there is a fire, people have to leave their houses and go to a safe area. And so what happened was this community, they left. This has happened recently. The community left their homes and they seek refuge in this church. And the church provided shelter, provided food, water, counseling, and everything. And so because this is a big event in Los Angeles, there were a lot of TV covering what happened to the event. And they were one of the channel, I'm not sure, channel 5 or channel 2. They were interviewing the communication director of this church. And they were asked, how could you in a short notice mobilize this shelter? And I was watching the news and I was expecting it was because of God or something to that effect. I never heard the word God in her statement. She said, us at church, we have prepared for calamities like this. As a church, we have mobilized volunteers. As a church, we have get emergency funds. As a church, we have provided this. As a church, and the news goes on and on. And I never heard the word God. Church, we will be in a situation where people will focus on us. I'd like for us to just, for a second, just bring back the glory. When things go well, the temptation is there to say, look what we have done. But it's not what we have done. It's what God has done through us. And the question this morning is, are you willing, church, to be a Gideon, to allow God to do great things through you? And all God's goodness. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, we are a bunch of ordinary people in this